Palidin Ramsey's business took a complicated twist. On the first day of September, Dr. McDowell returned to his cottage. He would be there for the whole month of September and half of October. Dr. McDowell did not want anybody but himself fishing in his salmon pool. Palidin had already been run out of Judge Martin's pools. The judge hadn't minded at first, but then he saw that Palidin was catching too many fish, more than his limit. Palidin had been severely reprimanded at first and was lucky to get away without being reported to the wardens. Palidin then tried the Cabbage Island Salmon Club's pool. In September, the club's business boomed. For the whole month, all 5 cabins were occupied by American anglers, paying in the vicinity of $100 a day for the privilege of staying there and fishing the productive waters. Frank Layton, the club's manager, did not want Palidin to fish in the pool. It was overcrowded already. Sam Little from Hartford, Connecticut, ruled his pool as selfishly as everyone else, but he did not own both sides of the river. Across the river from Sam Little's was the Lyndon Tucker Pool, which from then on would be called the Bill Wallace Pool. When Palidin arrived at the Bill Wallace Pool, he found Dan Brennan, Lyndon Tucker, and Bert Totter all wading waist-deep, fishing. A little fort of rocks had been constructed at the water's edge, which was occupied by 3 dead fish, 2 grills, and a salmon. Palidin sat on a rock to watch and listen. The men were carrying on a leisurely conversation while they fished. "How big was it?" asked Bert. "I wouldn't say for sure I wouldn't swear to it, but it looked to me to be about 10, 12, 14, 16 pounds. Got him right behind his pet rock over there. Gets one every day, he does, so he does." "I don't see his card there now," commented Dan. No. Got his limit twice. Watched him, got his limit this morning and again this afternoon. Got his limit twice and left." It was that obvious that Lyndon was not happy with the day's activity of Sam Little. Lyndon did not like Sam Little one bit. Sam Little fished without a guide ever since he bought the shore from Stan Tooney, who lived across the way. Lyndon used to guide Sam, but Sam, once he owned riverfront property, did not legally need a guide anymore, so Lyndon lost out on a month's work every summer. "G'day, Ramsey, how's she going?" yelled Dan. "Good," said Palidin. "I see you got some fish." These men, like all the men and boys in Brennan's sighting, did not like Palidin Ramsey. He was fruity. He read all the time. Dan particularly did not like him. With all that knowledge, Palidin might learn and surpass Dan's own limited knowledge. But on the river, things were different. On the river, although it had never actually been spoken about, it was customary to be courteous, gentlemanly, a rule that all except for the Americans and the Monktonians followed. Local anglers especially did not like Monktonians. In Palidin's case, they would tolerate him with a subtle sarcasm. "Lyndon and Bert got them. I ain't seen a thing," said Dan. "What did you get them on?" asked Palidin. "Butterfly, butterfly, butterfly. Got them on butterfly." "Green butt?" "Orange. Orange. Got 2 on my green butt," said Bert. "The salmon come clean out of the water for it." "Wow, he hit it hard. Bert was very pleased with his success and started to sing. "My little blue charm is better than your yellow coster boom." "What are you working at, Palidin?" asked Dan. Bert Totter laughed. "Ha ha ha, tee hee, sob sob." The thought that Palidin Ramsey would ever have a job was indeed amusing. "Selling post holes," said Palidin. He did not laugh. He knew the men were making fun of him. Dan Brennan frowned and spat into the water. He badly wanted to catch a fish, a big one to show the others up. He considered changing flies. Only for Lyndon and Bert. I might have caught them fish myself, he thought. Dan did not like for anyone other than himself to catch a fish. He had fished for 2 hours and was growing impatient with the inactivity. And now that young boy is waiting to get in. He made another long, well-executed cast. The fly landed lightly, but it began to swing on the current. It passed several hot spots, but nothing surfaced or grabbed it. "The nets are catching all the fish," commented Dan. "'Pon me soul, yeah, nets are getting them, Dan, old boy. Nets, yeah. Couldn't catch the clap in them with all them nets in the river, Dan, old boy," Chummy purred. "Tee hee hee, sob, tee sob." "It's not the downriver nets," commented Palidin. "It's the Russian and Danes, fishing off the coast of Greenland." "It's them Frenchmen. Them lads want her all." Dan was disagreeing with Palidin. "Ain't that right, boys?" He was looking for support. "Frenchmen, yeah, Dan, old boy, Frenchmen. Want her all, they do," agreed Lyndon. Bert Totter said, "The Frenchmen are trying to take her over." He was agreeing with Dan, but deep down he felt Palidin was right. But Dan was older, and that was reason enough to agree with him. Palidin knew their way and shrugged off the conversation. "I sure put that brat in his place," thought Dan. No one spoke for a few minutes. The men fished and scanned the water's surface with well-trained eyes. A salmon jumped upstream. "You're not fishing clean," yelled Palidin. No one commented. Thought Dan, fishing. Couldn't say fishing like everyone else. Bert Otter was fishing the upper end of the pool. Lyndon and Dan were moving too slowly for him. He decided to take a break and waded ashore. "You go try her, Palidin. I'm going to have a smoke." Palidin stood to let Bert sit down. "How's George Hanley these days?" asked Bert. Good, I think," said Palidin. Palidin eyed Bert's countenance for a few seconds, trying to see any expression that might betray Bert's motive for asking about George. Bert seemed to know something. But how? Palidin asked himself. "I'll give it a try," said Palidin, and walked to the water's edge. He waded waist-deep into the September water, thinking that he should have waders. Palidin hooked a fish on the first cast. The salmon weighed about 10 pounds and used every ounce, the current, and every trick it knew combined, it with all the strength and fury to avoid being beached. The hook was embedded deep in its gills, the leader strong, the fisherman skilled. The salmon lost the battle. Palidin killed it and placed it in the pool with Lyndon's and Bert's. Bert Totter and Lyndon Tucker seemed genuinely happy with the action, with Palidin's performance. Dan Brennan had left and gone home. On the 20th of September, the mail came as usual, but this time when Shirley opened the bag, there was a letter in it addressed to her from Ottawa. It was a notice from the Director of Postal Services saying that a change in the postal system was occurring. Her address was being changed. RR number 5 was replacing Brendan Siding NB. The rural post offices were to be replaced by a rural route. On the 1st of January, Shirley would be out of a job. Shirley read the letter, put it down, rolled a cigarette, lit up, and began to take inventory. Jug is married and living in Renew. Ugin is working in Newcastle. I haven't seen Ugin in 6 months. Bean is married to Mary Frances Shaw, and they're having their own problems. Bean's out of work, and Mary Frances is going to have the 3rd baby any day. I'll be a grandmother again. Nagy's working at Eaton's in Moncton. Nag might be able to help me. She's got a good job. Don't do nothing but a clerk in that big store. Nini and Bossy are married and living in Gordon. Junior's married to Mary Stewart and still living with old Silas. Junior will get that place when old Silas dies, which shouldn't be too far away, I hope. Digger's in Toronto or Leamington or someplace. Last time Digger came home, he stayed drunk all the time he was here. Skippy finally married Joe Moon and is living in Quarryville. They finally got married, thank God. Done it just after Joe's dog got killed. That just leaves Palidin and Dryfly home with me. Shirley butted her cigarette and went to the piece of mirror that hung over the water buckets. "Me hair's starting to turn gray," she thought. "I ain't but 45. I got 8 grandchildren and me hair's turning gray. My teeth have just about had the biscuit too. I'm getting fat. I wish I could get rid of that wart on me cheek." Shirley sighed. "I won't be getting fat this winter when there's nothing to eat in the house and no money." Shirley went back to the table and rolled herself another cigarette. "Palidin's crazier than the birds," she thought. "Don't know where I went wrong with him. All he does is read and fish. I must have salted 20 salmon. Enough to do the winter, but you can't live on salty salmon, can you? Dryfly's no good either. All he does is play guitar. Well, I got till January. Something might happen before then." By the last week of September, Palidin ran into another complication. He didn't have waders, and the water was getting too cold for comfort. Palidin had clients all over the Blackville area who wanted salmon, who paid good money to get them. He could afford to buy waders, but it was getting late in the season, and he felt that waders at this late date might not be worth the investment. The salmon would be spawning within a few weeks, and people would quit buying. The waders might not pay for themselves. George Hanley's, Palidin's business partner, was having the same difficulties. Plus, his father was getting suspicious and didn't want him borrowing the car so often. If one got caught selling salmon from a car, one not only got fined and jailed, they'd take the car as well. Palidin and George sat on 2 tombstones in the cemetery behind the Baptist church and discussed the situation. A giant harvest moon lit up this night. From the forest back of Totterbrook there came the sound of a trumpet playing "Red Roses for a Blue Lady." "We got $350 between us," said Palidin. "We could buy an old car for that kind of money." "Yep, sure would be nice," said George. "Mom can't afford to keep me any longer, and I'm no good for woods work, are you? Never worked in the woods in my life." "What will we do, George?" "We could get an old car and head for Fredericton or someplace. We could get a job in Fredericton. We could hunt up Greg Allen, tell him who we are. He might get us a job in no time. I wonder how Lyndon Tucker's doing over there. Hard to say. Lyndon got a big chunk of money for his shore. He'll be all right. A lot of lads from Blackville are going to Toronto." "That'd be nice, living in Toronto." "We should think about it, George. Sounds good to me." Dryfly had but one thing on his mind. He was not getting any letters from Lillian. He couldn't write her one because he had been too dumb to get her address. All he could do was wait. Shadrach Nash had started to work for his father, cutting logs. Shad did not like working with Bob's new chainsaw any more than he liked peeling pulp. Dry figured Shad would quit his job in a day or two. Shad and Dry were spending a great deal of time with Nutbeam. Nutbeam was teaching them how to hunt and trap, and the boys were teaching Nutbeam some new songs to play on the trumpet. It just seemed to happen overnight, thought Dryfly. One day he couldn't play a thing, and the next day he was doing the very best of a job on Red Roses for a Blue Lady. Nutbeam had become a good friend of the boys. His camp was a good place to party and play music. Nutbeam never seemed to care how late they stayed or how dirty they talked. He'd often cook them up a pan of venison and occasionally sent them to the bootlegger in Gordon for a golden net. He never wanted them to share in the cost, but he did ask them to run a few errands. Shadrach and Dryfly did much of Nutbeam's shopping at Bernie Hanley's store, thus cutting back on the dreaded trips to Newcastle. They also helped him patch the roof of his camp and gather wood for the winter. The boys did not mind working for Nutbeam. It never seemed like work to them. It was more like play. Some nights when the boys went to visit Nutbeam, he would not be there and they'd have to wait, sometimes for as much as a couple of hours, for his return. They didn't know where he was going or for what reason, and he never offered to explain. Nutbeam was spending many evenings listening to Shirley Ramsey's radio. This turned out to be one of the nights when Dryfly arrived at Nutbeam's camp. He found it empty. Dryfly sat beside the door to wait. Dryfly knew that Shadrach might not come tonight either. Shadrach was rising at 6 in the morning these days and working hard. Shadrach would be too tired to play at nights and would not show up until he finally quit his job. In about 3 days, thought Dryfly. It was very pleasant there by Nutbeam's camp. The evening was warm for September, and a big moon rose from the forest to keep him company. That moon is shining down on Lillian Wallace, the same as it's shining down on me, thought Dryfly. I wish I was with her. I wish she was here. In his mind's eye, Dryfly visualized Lillian sitting beneath the moon, somewhere in the States. You could see her big blue eyes and golden hair, the smile on the lips that had kissed him so gently. Let her write to me, he thought. Dryfly didn't know it, but Lillian Wallace was indeed writing to him at that very moment. "G'day, Dryfly," said Nutbeam. Dryfly had not heard Nutbeam approaching and was somewhat startled. "G'day, how's she going?" "Good." "Out for a walk?" "I got a slug of wine left. Want some?" "Yeah, maybe." Nutbeam went into his camp and returned momentarily with a less than half-full bottle of golden nut. Nutbeam was downhearted. He had just returned from watching Shirley Ramsey take a bath. Shirley Ramsey was looking more beautiful to Nutbeam every day. Nutbeam sat beside Dryfly, screwed off the top of the bottle, and they both took a drink. They did not talk for what seemed like a very long time, just eyed the moon and thought of their lovers. Dryfly was the first one to break the silence. "Ever been in love?" he asked. Because Nutbeam had been thinking that he was in love with Shirley Ramsey, Dryfly's question surprised him. It seemed as if Dryfly had been reading his thoughts. "I don't know," said Nutbeam. "It takes two to fall in love. No woman ever looked sideways at me long enough to fall for me. Don't you ever get tired of living alone? It's better than being feared or laughed at all the time. I once went to a dance and asked every girl there to dance with me. Not one said yes. Even the homeliest old woman there laughed and turned me down. People wouldn't even sit close to me. I don't think you're that homely, Nutbeam. You're just getting used to me, that's all. It doesn't matter anyway. Look at me. I'm in love, but it don't matter none. I'll probably never see her again. Anyway, I don't think she loves me as much as I love her. Well, you're young and ain't nearly as homely as me. You'll get a woman soon enough. Ain't no other woman like this one." "There ain't no other woman like Shirley Ramsey," thought Nutbeam. "There's a lot of fish in the sea," he said. Nutbeam wanted to get to know Shirley Ramsey very much, but he didn't know how to set up the opportunity. He had befriended Dryfly, hoping it might lead somewhere. This was the first private conversation they had, and Nutbeam sought a way to approach the topic. He drank some more wine, hoping it would loosen his tongue a little. "How's your mother?" asked Nutbeam. "She's all right. Your father's dead, ain't he? Never saw him in me life. Your mother must get awful lonesome with no man around." "I don't know. Never thought about it. She ever look sideways at another man after your father died?" "I don't know. Not that I know of. Your mother's an awful pretty woman," said Nutbeam. "She probably was a long time ago. Still is. I never thought of it before, but Mom never goes anywhere. Stays at home all the time, ain't got a friend." "Sounds like me. She should start going to dances or something," said Dryfly. "Maybe she'd meet up with some friends." "You know what I'd like you to do, Dry?" "What's that?" Sing me a song." Dryfly eyed the moon and thought of Lillian Wallace. He sang, "Roses are bloomin', come back to me, darlin', and never more roam." "Get up, Shad. It's time to go to work." Day 4, thought Shadrach. Another day in the woods and I'll die. I'll die, I'll die, I'll die. I hate it. I'll starve to death before I pick up that chainsaw again. "Shad, I'm too sore, Mom. I can't hardly walk." "Don't give me that. You get out here and go to the woods right this minute." "I tell ya, I'm too sore. I'm pretty near dead." "You deaf?" "Sore? Sore? A big boy like you sore? Your poor old father's been back there for an hour, and you're lying in bed sleeping. Sore? Now get out there and eat your breakfast before I take a stick to you. Sore. I'm a big man of 15 years old getting sore, hanging around doing nothing like that. That Dryfly Ramsey. No wonder you're lazy, hanging around with the likes of that tramp. What's ever gonna become of you? Shad knew there was no stopping his mother. She had the stage front and center and would transmit spiel after spiel, condemning every man, woman, and child that Shadrach ever as much as said hello to. She would start with Dryfly Ramsey and end with Dryfly Ramsey, but in between she'd find examples of depression and poverty from both ends of the river. She would bring in her own aging, ailing state. Bob's deterioration, the state of Bob's grandfather, who had been no more than a no-good tramp. The Bible would come into the picture, and how she'd had hopes for Shad to become a minister someday like Cousin Ralph. She would yell through the bedroom door for as long as Shad stayed in there. Shad arose, dressed, toileted, and limped into the kitchen. The hard work, running the chainsaw, had stiffened his muscles. He was not lying about being sore. He checked the time. 9 o'clock, he thought. Dad will be ugly at me. I was supposed to be back in the woods at 8. I'm an hour late. He turned on the radio and sat at the table to listen, to wait for his toast and eggs. The radio was turned on to CFNB, and Jack Finetti said, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Facts and Fancy. Today we are coming to you from under overcast skies. Our temperature is expected to remain stable at about 55 degrees, and we can expect rain, rain, rain." Jack Finetti went on to read some poetry and a prayer. He sent out birthday greetings to Mrs. Smith, who was 100 years young today. He played the Yellow Rose of Texas and Bernadine. Shad eyed the kitchen window as he ate his eggs and toast. "Please, God, let it rain," he prayed. Shad knew that his father would not work in the rain. Shad knew by the swiftly moving clouds that chances were very good he'd get the day off. At 9:30, Jack Finetti played CFNB's rattling, ear-torturing news music and said, "CFNB, where New Brunswick hears the news." Shad didn't care about the news. There was nothing happening outside of Brennan's sighting that concerned him. Shad gulped down the last of his tea and headed for the woods. When Shadrach stepped outside, the September morning greeted him with a light drizzle. "It's gonna rain, it's gonna rain," he sang. "You can't work in the rain. Thank God it's rain." The rain seemed to Shadrach to be a magical rain, for indeed, the soreness left his limbs with every drop that fell. On the way back to the worksite, Shadrach met his father coming home. "Gonna rain," said Bob Nash. "I figured that," said Shad. "That's why I didn't bother to hurry." "I covered up the chainsaw on the gas jug," said Bob. Bob Nash didn't want to work that day either. It was mid-September, and the salmon, the September run, were here. Bob Nash had it in mind to go fishing. An hour later, Shadrach announced that he had it in his mind to go to Shirley Ramsey's to get the mail. He put on his jacket and headed for the footbridge. The rain was heavier now and slanted in from the southwest. The red checkered mackinaw did little to keep him dry. Shadrach didn't care if he got wet. Getting wet is a lot better than working in the woods, he thought. Dryfly awakened to the sounds of Palidin moving about in his room and Shirley talking. "What are you going to be doing way out there in Toronto?" Shirley was asking Palidin. "I don't know," said Palidin. "Get a job, work. Ain't nothing to do around here." "How you going to get there?" "Train." "Where are you getting the money?" "I got some money." "Where you'll live?" "I'll get a room." "Way out there in Toronto all by yourself. Toronto's an awful bad place, so it is. No one to cook for you or look after you. It's not like home, you know, and you'll be all alone." "I won't be alone, Mama. George Hanley's going too." Palidin was packing a cardboard box with his belongings. The box was not very big. Palidin only had one extra pair of jeans, a shirt, a pair of shorts, and a pair of socks with the heels worn through to put in the box. He found a white t-shirt shirt in the corner. It was dirty, but he threw it in the box anyway. "How long you planning on staying?" asked Shirley. "I don't know. A month? 6 months? A year? If I get a job, I'll send you home some money." "What if you don't get a job? What if you get lonesome?" "I'll be all right, Mom." The tears were threatening to overflow Palidin's eyes. He was getting lonesome already. Shirley went back into the kitchen to smoke, to cry, to think things over. Poor little Palidin, she thought. Only 16, way up in Toronto. I may never see him again. Palidin sat on the bed to talk to Dryfly. "I'm going to Toronto," he said. "No? Yet what for?" "Gotta get a job. Ain't nothing to do around here." "When you coming back?" "I don't know for sure." "Did I hear you say George Hanley's going too?" "Yeah, we're catching the train in half an hour. Will you stay home and look after Mom?" "I don't know, I guess. Mom's losing the post office. She's gonna need a lot of help. I'll send you some money soon as I get on my feet." "You won't be scared up there?" Palidin shrugged. "Gonna miss you, pal." "You won't miss me. You'll be too busy courting all the women." "Ain't no women around here." "Dry?" "Yeah."
Remember me catching all them salmon?
Yeah? Well, there's a trick to it.
A trick?
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you the trick, but I don't want you to tell anybody else. It's a good trick, and it could make us rich someday. Promise not to tell it?
Sure.
Palidin proceeded to tell Dryfly the ins and outs of magnetizing salmon flies. When he was sure that Dryfly understood completely, he gave Dryfly the little lodestone he'd been using. Works every time, said Palidin. Now, I gotta go. The train will be here any minute. Be good, pal. Yeah, you too. In the kitchen, Palidin stopped to kiss Shirley goodbye. I love you, Mom, he said. I love you too, pal. You know you can always come home, pal. You know where your home is. I know, Mom. I'll send you money, Mom. Don't you worry. Palidin forced back the tears as he eyed the ugly, the laughed-at, the forsaken woman. My mother in Helen MacDonald's hand-me-down dress, her hair starting to turn gray. The most beautiful mother in the whole world, he thought. Don't cry, Mom, said Palidin, and quickly, so as not to change his mind, he picked up the box and left. On the way to the Brennan siding house, where he would meet the train, Palidin passed Shadrach and Ash on the road. Shadrach was limping slightly and looked soaked to the skin. See ya, Shad, were the only words spoken, and Palidin made no attempt to hide the fact that he was capable of crying. At Shirley Ramsey's house, Shadrach sensed that something dramatic had just occurred. What's wrong with Palidin? Shadrach asked Dryfly. Him and George Hanley eloped, said Dry.